Hi there everyone, my name's Matt. I'm an economics graduate and accountant, currently living in Cheshire. And yes, I'm back. This is still my continued push at the start of 2021 to take YouTube a bit more seriously, dedicate myself to it for 3 months and see where that gets me. Who knows? So far I'm at 2 subscribers, so things are going pretty well. Anyway, that's enough of an introduction, enough about my New Year's resolution. Today I'd like to talk to you all about this. It's my Apple Watch Series 5, GPS, not cellular unfortunately. So I've never owned an Apple Watch before, although I'm a huge fan of the rest of Apple's range of products. I bought this watch at the start of Lockdown 1 in March, April time last year. And today I'm going to do a little bit of an overview review type video around how I found it, having worn it almost every day for the last 9 months or so. Just as a quick caveat before we start, I'm going to try and talk about things that have sort of real day-to-day relevance on people's lives and the sort of things that I'd say to a friend if they asked me, should I be getting one of these watches? I'm less concerned by the nitty-gritty techie details in terms of upgrades between different series of the watch. The always on display, for example, is a nice touch on this version, but is it going to really change your life? I would argue not. Hopefully that all makes sense. Wow, that sounds so much like a work email. Note to self, stop sounding so wooden on the new YouTube channel. So let's crack on. Today I'm going to try and cover 3 pros and 3 cons to try and give something of a balanced opinion. So to start off, the first main and best thing about having an Apple Watch is the impact it's had on my relationship with exercise. For me, I've never done as much running and walking as I have done in the last 9 or 10 months. And before you say anything, that isn't just because it's been lockdown. I do think the watch has played a big part in that. Last summer, a lot of stuff reopened, didn't it, for a while, but I still kept up the exercise just because of the psychological impact of having the 3 little rings turning round on your wrist. The way I've got the watch set up, I can always see my progress against these 3 rings on the face of the watch. You can obviously change that, but I think to have it any other way sort of defeats the purpose. And basically throughout the course of the day you can keep an eye on how many active calories you've burnt. You can obviously only do this by getting your heart rate up, and it serves as a reminder that, oh yeah, actually I do need to still squeeze in a walk later before dinner, or if I go for a run first thing in the morning, then I'll be ahead of the game for the rest of the day. I'm far from a psychologist and I can't explain the phenomenon of not wanting to let the watch down, but that is actually how I feel when I wear it, and I can see that my progress against the rings hasn't been very good. Possibly it comes down to how much money you spent on it in the first place, a bit like an expensive gym membership inspires you to go slightly more often than you might do otherwise. So I think the psychology of this is definitely a factor, especially in the early days of wearing the watch. Arguably after a little while, the habit sort of ingrains itself slightly more and you could risk not wearing the watch, and hopefully the exercise would still happen, but that's not something I'm willing to risk just yet. Just quickly, as well as the active calorie tracker, which is the main one that I use, the other 2 rings show exercise in terms of number of minutes done and how many hours throughout the course of the day you've stood up for. I don't focus as much on these 2. I have the active calorie target set at 800 active calories a day, and as long as I'm hitting that, the rest sort of takes care of itself. So to move on to point number 2, this one is regarding the level of comfort of actually having the watch on your wrist. I know before I bought the watch I was slightly wary of the fact that it might be heavy and clunky and too big on your wrist. There's obviously got to be somewhere for all the sensors and fancy chips to be stored, so I thought it might be quite a chunky device, but actually it's anything but. The biggest compliment I can pay, as a football pundit would say, is whilst the watch is on my wrist, it's really easy to forget it's there. It's so light, and with the rubbery strap there's just a tiny bit of tackiness that stops it sliding up and down your wrist at all, which is something that I've noticed on some of my metal stainless steel watches. Even when they're the perfect size, just by moving your wrist throughout the course of the day, it does sort of move slightly and you can tell it's there, whereas with the Apple Watch this is not the case at all. Let me see if I can show you. So there's no sort of sliding around going on at all. Well, this looks like a weird dance. So my final pro is something that's slightly more niche than... Where's the light gone? So my final pro is something that's slightly more niche than the first 2 points, but I think still a good one. Something I find myself actually doing quite a lot now is answering phone calls on the watch itself. Hello? She has? Really? Oh, I'll be right there. Well, no, I won't because we're locked down. But thanks for the heads up anyway. Okay, bye. When my phone is somewhere else in the house and if I didn't have the watch on, I would have missed the call. This stops the risk of that completely. So I'm 27 years old. I do not have a landline and I don't plan on getting one anytime soon. Possibly that's how full-grown adults combat this issue, because the phone rings loudly throughout the whole house. And I must admit, I didn't realise this problem was present in my life until I found the solution to it, which is the watch. So maybe it's something that's a little bit niche. Maybe people aren't really too bothered about missing a call. They can always ring someone back 2 minutes later. But yeah, with this, you'll never miss a call again. You'll never miss somebody because you left your phone upstairs while you popped down to make a coffee. And it's just something that took me by surprise in terms of how useful it actually is. So moving on to the negatives now. The first one is possibly my own fault in terms of being a user error. Please do let me know if I'm being stupid when anyone ever actually watches this video, which is probably not going to be for 4 years' time, and I'll be wearing a different watch by then, but the point still stands. So one thing the watch is able to do is track your sleep. Exactly how it does that, I'm not too sure. Something to do with basically how much you're moving around during the course of the night. And this helps you find your optimal sleeping pattern or sleep cycles or whatever. So this sounds clever, it sounds interesting. I was keen to try it out, but herein lies the problem. If you wear your Apple Watch all night to track your sleep, when you then wake up and take the first steps out of bed, keen to get your active calorie count as high as you can, when are you supposed to charge the watch? Personally, I've got into the habit of charging the watch overnight on my bedside table, and first thing in the morning I put the watch on. So some smart aleck could turn around and say, well, wear the watch all night, wake up, put it on charge first thing in the morning, go about your low-key first few hours of the day, and then put the watch on again nearer lunchtime, ready to track all the exercise that you are hopefully doing in the afternoon. And I understand all this, but I worry that it's a slippery slope to forgetting to put the watch back on at all, or forgetting to put it on charge. And something I think that's really important for me in terms of actually getting the most out of it is consistently wearing it actually for the same amount of time each day, so that when you look back on your sort of the tracking history that it stores, it's actually meaningful comparisons you're able to draw and say, you know what, actually every Monday my exercise levels are down compared to the rest of the week because I can't be bothered. All those sort of meaningful insights go out the window if you sort of happen to forget to put it on one day and the next day you wear it for twice as long as the day before. Possibly not a huge deal, but just something to bear in mind. So my second niggly little issue is actually related to the pro of never missing a call, but in this instance it's never missing a work email. Now this isn't something I suffer with personally. I've got those notifications disabled, unless my boss is watching this, in which case I definitely don't. But my girlfriend has work emails enabled on her watch, and I get the logic. Something really important might come through and you don't want to miss it. But this does mean you can end up in the suboptimal position of watching TV in an evening or eating dinner, and your wrist is constantly buzzing with work-related chat. Again, it's only a little thing, but it can be slightly annoying. Probably less so if they're actually your emails, but slightly annoying for me. Again, I understand that I'm open to some clever clogs turning around and say, well, what's the difference between having notifications pop up on your watch and the same sort of thing pop up on your phone? Again, this is probably something that's fair enough, half true, but what I'd say is it's way easier to take your phone and turn that upside down for the 52 minutes that it takes to watch an episode of Game of Thrones that I don't like to be disturbed for. Whereas I think when you're actually wearing a watch on your wrist, it is far more actually a part of you and far harder to ignore. Maybe that's just me. There probably are loads of different solutions, but just one worth considering. My final thumbs down point relates to the functionality of a lot of the apps on the watch. I get that the screen is small, and obviously I wouldn't expect it to be able to do everything my iPhone can. Same goes for the size of the body of the watch. It's far smaller than my iPhone. There's less technology in there. It can't do everything. That said, it would be good if a few of the key apps could do a little bit more. As an example, the most frustrating issue for me is with the Spotify app, whereby I can't download songs to the watch itself through the Spotify app, which means I can't go running with AirPods in and the watch on the wrist and listen to music for the 15, 20 minutes, half an hour that it takes me to do the run. This is pretty annoying and something that hopefully Spotify fixes pretty soon. To be fair to Apple Music, you are able to do exactly what I just described on that platform, but personally I prefer Spotify. I use Spotify in every other aspect of my life, and actually what this means is I now have to have subscriptions to 2 different music providers, one for 99% of my life and the other, Apple Music, that I don't like, just so that I can listen to music while I'm out running without having to hold a big iPhone in your hand or have it banging around in your pocket. A little bit annoying. But again, possibly not a deal breaker, just a little bit of a faff. Anyway, that's enough from me. That concludes my retrospective, practical view of what it's like to own an Apple Watch Series 5, or any Apple Watch really. What I'd say is, if you are umming and ahhing as to whether to make the purchase, if you're looking to do it for fitness and exercise reasons, then 100% go ahead. It will be one of the best investments you make this year. For any other use cases, if you're just trying to add to your Apple portfolio for the sake of it, I'd just say take slightly longer to think about it. It's cool, but is the Apple Watch going to change your life in the same way that a pair of AirPods do? I'm not so sure. I've just realised I could look like a bit of a fool if someone's able to pop up in the comments and say, by the way, did you know you could just do this, this and this, and it will solve all of the negative aspects of the watch for you. But that's unlikely to happen until someone actually starts watching the videos, so it's a risk I am willing to take. That's all from me today, guys. All the best till next time. See you later.